Mortdog released the updated augment odds for set 7. Here's a nicer chart to better illustrate what this actually looks like, and credit to Ty for making that. This is really important for two reasons. One, you can reroll your augments in set 7 only once per game, so you need to know what's coming. Second, the third augment comes at 4-2, so changing your board after wolves makes a much bigger difference when it comes to getting your third augment. In this video, I'll explain the important patterns and how they apply to different scenarios, when you should be rerolling your augment, and when you should potentially be changing your board in order to suit future augments. Now, there's quite a few patterns that you can deduce from studying the chart, however, I'll go over three main ones. The most important is knowing when a prismatic is coming. It's mainly on the third, however, you can be a little bit concerned about the second augment being a prismatic. If you start gold, then you should be worrying a little bit. Otherwise, if you already start prismatic, then the tempo is pretty similar if you hit a second prismatic. But yeah, just keep in mind, if you do start silver, then you're less likely to see a prismatic as your second augment. And there are a few scenarios that you should remember when considering prismatic as your third augment. If you have a silver then prismatic, then the third augment is a pretty decent chance. Same goes for if you have a prismatic, then the third augment has a 50% chance again. It's in these two scenarios that you might want to hold on some gold for level up, as the third augment could very likely be a prismatic. Another thing to keep in mind is when silver augments are coming up, so that you can reroll your second augment and not have as many bad repercussions. However, this doesn't really happen, as the third augment being a silver is pretty low likelihood in all scenarios. However, do keep in mind there are a few cases where the third augment is likely to be gold. If you go gold and then prismatic, then the third augment has a 77% chance of ending with a gold. Hence, you can reroll your second augment, which is a prismatic, and not have as many bad repercussions because your third augment is only a gold. A similar scenario is if you start the game gold, then get gold as your second augment, you can again reroll this because you have a very high chance of getting another gold augment as your third. However, do keep in mind you are risking rerolling a gold for a very low chance that your third augment is a prismatic, so this one's a little bit more risky. The next important thing to note is when gold augments are coming up because of the new augment Earth's Grab Bag, which gives you a spatula. Usually this information is important because you need to know when you should be picking up spatulas from the carousels, as if you can get yourself a Tactician's Crown, then it's a huge advantage. The only pattern really to note is if you start the game silver and then you get a prismatic as your second augment, you have a 0% chance of getting gold as your third, so the odds of you getting Earth's Grab Bag 1 is 0. They do have Earth's Grab Bag 2 as a prismatic, but there's a lot of better options that you'd rather choose. Once per game, you can reroll one of your augments. So when should you do this? You obviously very rarely want to reroll your first augment because at the start of the game is when you are the most flexible and you can usually play with any augment. The only exception to this is if you open prismatic and get a really bad one, or if you get absolutely unusable gold augments. If the last augment is likely to be a gold augment, then you can more comfortably reroll your second augment. If we take note of what I said in the patterns, if you start the game with a gold and then a prismatic, or a gold and then a gold, then more often than not, I'll be comfortable rerolling my second augment because I know the last one's less likely to be a prismatic, and so making sure that my mid game is strong is definitely not a bad thing. Keep in mind these are all guidelines. The most important factor when it comes to choosing when to use your reroll is of course the availability of your options, how bad they are given your playstyle, your board strength, your itemization and your units. However, obviously these factors do weigh in and you should be considering them if you're having a tough time deciding whether or not you should be greeting your reroll. Every single game, you know exactly when the augments are coming, so you have the option of pivoting your board before they come, so that if you get tailored augments, they better suit your current board, which is the one that you intend on running for a longer amount of time. Usually if you open fort during stage 2, you want to roll down at 3-1 and pivot your board into units that reflect what you want to play for the mid and late game. Now the third augment is offered at 4-2, which means that every single game after wolves, you want to pivot your board into something that reflects what you want to play during stage 5. And again, this is extremely important if you know that the third augment is likely to be a prismatic. Going back to the patterns that we saw earlier, if it's a silver then a prismatic, or a prismatic then a prismatic, then you have a 50% chance of getting a third augment prismatic, which means your board should 100% be tailored to what you want to run in stage 5. Keep in mind this is still important for gold augments and less so for silvers, but it is something to consider, especially when consulting the chart. And that is the end of the video. Now, if you're a more casual player or low elo for that matter, don't be too overwhelmed by these numbers. These aren't things that the everyday player needs to be thinking about. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it to a majority of my viewer base. However, for those who are interested in numbers or looking to get that slight little edge over their opponents, then this is something that can help you when deciding whether or not you should be changing your board or when you should be using your reroll in set 7. I hope you guys did enjoy learning about the different numbers and how you can analyze this data. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.